In the summer of 2024, Final Fantasy XIV released its latest expansion, Dawntrail. This was going to be a clean slate for the story that was detached from the Hydaelyn and Zodiac saga. And given the reputation that the game had garnered over the last 10 years, let's just say that the sky was the limit for the potential of this new story. And well, Dawntrail came out, and for the first time since A Realm Reborn, I unsubscribed. I unsubscribed for a long time. Welcome back to the channel, y'all. Today we're going to be going over why I think right now, if you're a mid-core player, is the best time to be getting back into Final Fantasy XIV, especially if you bounced off Dawntrail. Now, I'm not like very hardcore, as in I don't like doing savage raiding and I don't like doing ultimates, too much of a time investment really, but I'm not on the super casual side either where I just, I play for the story. No, I'm somewhere in the middle where I like doing the EX trials, the Unreals. Really my bread and butter is the deep dungeons and then the field operations. Those are kind of what I like and I enjoy about this game, on top of the story, being really invested in the story, because do not downplay how important a story is. When your story is firing on all cylinders, you get somebody like me who is going to buy all of the encyclopedias here. I also have the cookbook. It's okay. If you're somebody who cooks, then this really isn't going to do a lot for you. And I also have all the vinyls, at least up until Endwalker. So needless to say, I'm not some fair weather fan when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV. So essentially, through and through, Final Fantasy XIV is just a quality product up and down. From the music, the story, the gameplay, everything. Even the visuals. Some people don't think so, but I love the visuals in this game. I think it looks really clean and crisp, and they're going to age just fine. So when Dawntrail came out, well, what happened? Well, and I think the best way to sum it up is it was the perfect storm of essentially everything going wrong. I think to fully explain my feelings towards Dawntrail, we actually need to go back to Endwalker. Because post-MSQ Endwalker, some serious cracks started to form for the game across the board. I'm talking about the story and then the content that was being released. Let's talk a little bit about the story, and we're not going to get into any of the spoilers. But essentially, the post-Endwalker story was very predictable. We all knew what was going to happen as soon as we got that first story patch. And that was a little bit off-putting because prior to that, every MSQ patch ending would usually leave you on some sort of cliffhanger where we didn't really know where the story was to go, or there was a lot of speculation and excitement building around it. So there's a lot of anticipation for that next patch. So you just kind of wanted to be in the world and just to feel like you were experiencing the story while it was going on. But the post-Endwalker story, well, we kind of already knew what we were going to do and where it was going to go. Now, I'm not saying the quality of the story or the writing or the characters were bad, but that excitement and that anticipation, well, it was essentially gone. So the post-Endwalker story, not firing on all cylinders, but the quality, it's still there, it's still good. What about the actual content that the developers were releasing? I'm going to be brutally honest here. I think the Endwalker expansion content that we got was some of the weakest the game has ever seen. We got Island Sanctuaries, which I don't think they really found their footing with that until like the later patches, but even then, it was very much a solo activity. We got Criterion Dungeons, which fundamentally those were pretty well received, except for they fumbled the reward structure. The Deep Dungeon that we received is probably the weakest Deep Dungeon with Eureka Orthos. I think they just missed the mark on what the spirit of Deep Dungeon is supposed to be all about. And then they also went back to that ugly ARR Allegan aesthetic, and man, that's really hard to look at. The Manderville, the relic weapons that we got were, again, some of the weakest because they were you just turned in tomes. And that's supposed to be, you building these ultimate weapons, and there was nothing ultimate about like that experience at all. I don't know what they were thinking with that one. And then we got no field operation for Endwalker. So where does that leave us as, again, this mid-core player base? Well, you could go back and do your backlog of content. The old relics, go back to either Eureka or go back to Baja. You can do either one of those. But remind you guys that in Shadowbringers, we had COVID, and we had probably the longest stretch of period between content because of that. And that time is when somebody like me, we went back and did our backlog of content. So the fact that another one of these periods of time came up, it's like I don't have a backlog that I want to go do. So what am I going to do now? Well, if you're an MMO player, you live and die with your MMO. As soon as your MMO dies, you die. That's not true at all. We take a break, but I didn't take a break. A little stubborn about it, and I feel like a lot of people do that. So we just kind of were subscribed, but just kind of doing the usual tome grinds and, the weekly rotation, and that was about it until Dawntrail. So Dawntrail finally hits, and immediately right out the gate, something is off. I'll tell you when I started to notice some inconsistencies is one of the reasons we're doing Dawntrail and we're going to Tyrol is because one of Wuklimat's brothers is potentially a tyrant, a warmonger that might threaten Eorzea. That's one of the reasons why we're going there, to kind of make sure that she takes the throne. But one of the things that we learn right when we get there to Tyrol is they don't have large ships for navigating the open sea. As in, they can't get to us. They don't have large enough boats to even get to Eorzea. How on earth were they ever going to threaten our side of the world if they can't even get across the ocean? Let alone, even if they did, say, start to mobilize and build up this armada of ships, we would have so much time in advance to prepare, try to stop it. And it's just this point, I sat there and I thought, well, that's a little weird. I don't really think that makes a whole lot of sense. But anyways, let's just continue on. And those sort of inconsistencies, they kept popping up over and over again. And I kind of had that same thought process of, that doesn't make a lot of sense, or I'm not really vibing with this. Well, anyways, we'll just keep going on. And if you basically want to know how the wheels came off the story, I would go watch Zepla's video. I essentially 100% agree with everything she said, and I basically had the same feelings as her as she went through the MSQ and why she felt so disconnected from it. And it's weird because with the story, as far as the aesthetic and the visuals, the first half, when you're in Tyrol and all that, I actually like the vibe we're going for. I think the art design, this South America look, looks really good. Really like being in these new maps. I think they're beautiful. But the story and the context of why we're there, wasn't liking it at all. Whereas the second half of the MSQ, when you deal with Solution 9, more interested in that story, but it was still very surface level as far as the themes that they were going for. And I think overall, it's just like everywhere you looked in Dawntrail, it was just an inconsistency as far as like quality. I just wasn't vibing with it. It was very off-putting. That's all I'll say on that. So for a mid-core player after the MSQ, where does that leave us? I actually think the battle content for Dawntrail was really a step up. The dungeons, the raids, the alliance raid, all those battles were really well done. But the story is really why you stay in the game, and that part was completely, again, very disconnected from that. I will say this about the alliance raids, just a quick aside. I am kind of tired of what they've been doing since Endwalker with the alliance raids, where you go into these raids with all these people and you basically start off in a realm, you go to beat that boss in that realm, and then it's just a complete transition change as far as the environment to a new realm, a new place. It feels very weird. I don't like it. You think it back to, again, the old alliance raids, something like Void Ark. You're on the Void Ark the entire time and you're fighting your way through it. Feels like there's a lot of gravity to it. They do the same thing with the Evilise raids, hell, even the near raids as well. I kind of hope they get back to just staying in one place instead of just, let's just go to all these fan favorite places or this new place all the time. It feels very, I don't know. It feels like they don't have a lot of confidence or a lot of like depth in what the story that they're trying to tell. So instead they're just like, ooh, we're going to a new site. Ooh, we're going to a new site. Or do you remember this from Final Fantasy XI? You remember this from Final Fantasy XI? It's just like, no, not really. I don't want that. Let's just get back to set locations for alliance raids. At least I hope that's what they do going forward. Now, admittedly, I've been kind of brief on why I kind of have stepped back from the game and why somebody like me, again, a mid-core player, would feel like, okay, 14 just hasn't been the MMO for me lately. But now I want to transition into why you should come back to Final Fantasy XIV. And the reason is because of this mini here. Look at this dog. This is the best mini in the game, hands down, by far. Yes, we got the mini version of you. Yeah, it's totally worth it. Totally worth it, guys. Get it back in game. Get the dog mini. It's the best. Okay, bye. And that's the only reason to come back into the game right now, guys. Go get that minion, and I will see you next time. But jokes aside, mid-core content, it's back, guys, and it's better than ever. And to me, there's three main ingredients to mid-core content. We have the deep dungeon, we have the field operations, and we have the relic weapon. And all three of these pieces of content, they're hitting the quality bar of their previous versions, if not exceeding some of them in the case of Pilgrim's Traverse. Now let's briefly touch on each of these mid-core, I would say, content. And the first one here is Pilgrim's Traverse, the Deep Dungeon. I think this is the evolutionary next step of the Deep Dungeon, where they have a great weekly reward structure built into this that you can make a lot of gil off of. It has the traditional progression in a deep dungeon as far as your aether pool, and the weapons that you get from it, I think they look really good as well. So big kudos there. And as far as the actual content, it feels very approachable as a new player, or even if you want to solo this deep dungeon, because mobs don't have a crazy amount of health, and then the bosses are all pretty fun to fight. They may catch you off the first time, but I feel like they're easy to master after a few times. And one of the best things they added to this dungeon is the floor that you start out on, because usually it's just you start off on the first floor or like floor 30. Now this one has it broken down where you can start on 50 or 70 as well. I hope they go back and retroactively add this to the other deep dungeons, especially Palace of the Dead, because Palace of the Dead, there's 200 floors. So I would love to be able to start on like floor 100 instead of just 50. That would be great. Let's get on top of that. And next up, let's talk about Occult Crescent. Kind of like the Deep Dungeon for Pilgrim's Traverse, they take a lot of steps forward as far as this type of content. One of the biggest steps forward is the Phantom Jobs. These almost like glean in on what Final Fantasy XIV could be if there was like a buildcraft side, because with these Phantom Jobs, it's kind of like having a subclass of sorts. So mixing and matching abilities with your primary job. This is a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of Buildcraft. So having all these Phantom Job options, it's just great across the board. My only gripe is the fact that we're just stuck to this one map and this one piece of content where we get to explore this. And so while I'm overall really enjoying Occult Crescent, they are missing a few things from the previous field content. Like the duels. I don't know why they got away from those. Those were a lot of fun. Definitely mixed up the formula, because right now it literally is just fate farming, and then you do your critical engagements, and then there will be bunnies that come up, or in this case it's the imps, where you go on like a little treasure farm. And although we have Forked Tower, which is like a Delubrum Regine almost savage version, we don't have the normal version of it, and that was just another nice thing that you could do in the last field operation, is just get this alliance raid together and tackle the Castrum Lacus Latori. So not having a version of that with the Forked Tower, it is a big step back. And I know for the next Occult Crescent map, they are going to introduce, the next Forked Tower, where they'll have a normal mode and then they'll have a savage mode. So at least they're addressing that for next time. And circling back to the relic weapon and why that's important for an expansion is because it's a good way to funnel you back into those other activities. Because I think back to Shadowbringers for the Save the Queen series, you would go into the Southern Front and you would just get all of these rewards that are compounding on each other. So for Dawntrail here, you can do Occult Crescent, you can do Pilgrim's Traverse, and you're going to be getting those intrinsic rewards that are already in those activities on top of building up your relic weapon. Now there are steps with the relic weapon where you are just using the duty finder or the duty roulette, and aside from that, most of those other steps you do have the option of doing them outside of the duty roulette system. Now I haven't talked about the 7.4 MSQ yet, and that's because it's really just building the foundation to springboard us into the next expansion, so there's not really much to go off there just yet. We have some ideas where the expansion could be, but again, 7.5 will probably have a much better picture. But other than that, guys, that is the video. I've wanted to make 14 videos on this channel for a long time, but I felt like 14 was in a place where it really wasn't for me. And now it's got all these pieces in by 7.4 here. And the 7.5, it's going to get even better. We're getting Beastmaster, we're getting the second map for Occult Crescent, and that's all the type of content that I love in the game. So if you've made it this far in the video and you've enjoyed this little ramble of mine for 14 and you want to see more 14 content from me, consider hitting that like button and commenting on anything that we talked about in the video here. And if you're new, subscribe, and that'll kind of let me know that, hey, let's talk more about Final Fantasy XIV, because I could yap on all day about it. But anyways, guys, that is the video. I will see you next time. Peace and take care.